Mr. Peterson?
So future, the county will do it?
Yes, sir. At that point, the volume will be maintained by the county because there will not be nearly the volume that we have right now.
Can I have a question on the additional services that were, I guess, tacked on to?
Those were additional if we requested those. If we do not ask
But
for
that's
those,
not a part of the
no ma'am.
99,000.
No, ma'am, just
That would have been
strictly-
additional to that.
Right.
Okay,
But
so,
all we're asking for is the 99.5 to do the scanning.
The question I asked on that, when you backing up these particular documents, do they secure it and place it where if something is hacked, if that system failed, do they have a secure system back to backlog this?
Yes, sir. We actually will have two servers. We'll have two servers with this information on it, and it will be encrypted.
Okay, that's what I want to know. The only reason I didn't talk about it, you when a lot of stuff got lost.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
of flooding, I'm trying to figure out, do we have something to back it up?
Yes, sir.
Got a motion?
second.
We got a motion by Mr. Gooden, we got a second by Mr. Trivett. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Fairfield State University, this is another renewal agreement, and this is giving nursing students the opportunity to do a public health rotation as part of their clinical requirements. There is no money involved in this agreement.
So moved. Second.
We got a motion by, Mr. Bullock, and we got a second by Mr. Cogdill. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
The next item is Rosefin and Bacillin rate charge. Upon review from a memo from Phyllis Rocca, who is our chief public health nurse, it was determined that the following STD service components are a billable service, which is the Rosefin and the Bacillin. And we are requesting that these charges be approved in these codes, and these are for STD treatment only.
So moved.
Second.
Got a, motion by Mr. Bullock, we got a second by Mr. Gooden. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have one question.
Okay.
You said that that's a reimbursement for us,
Yes, ma'am.
but not for, okay.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
The next item is our flu vaccine. We do have a new flu vaccine that we are going to be offering this year for our adults ages 55 to 64. Therefore, we're asking for a fee of $70 for this new vaccine.
Say again?
It's a new vaccine for adult ages 55 to 64. And it's a new one that has come across. It's a high dose. And we're asking to add this into our available flu vaccine.
And it costs to,
Our cost, I think, was included on the rate chart that you received, and we're asking for, between the cost of the vaccine and our administrative charges for a charge to be, passed along of $70.
and insurance reimbursement?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that means they can get.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion by Mr. Gooden, we got a second by Dr. Mongoy. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
The next is our environmental health policies. These fees were updated and approved some time ago. However, we're now getting the, policies in place that shows the change in administration.
The policy don't involve any shipping.
No, sir.
costs.
No, sir.
Got a motion by Mr. Peterson,
Second.
second by Mr. Dallas. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Policy and procedures for determining clinical costs. This policy again is being updated to reflect the change in leadership only.
Motion approved.
Got a motion by Mr. Bullock, we got a second by Mr. Trivett. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
The last item is the Board of Health operating procedures. This is the operating procedures that you, as the board, utilize as conducting business for the Board of Health, since y'all have assumed that role with the consolidation. These policies have been, and procedures have been reviewed. There are no changes, and I'm asking for them to be revised to show an approved date of October 1 of 2018.
Previously known as bylaws.
Motion approved.
Got a motion by Mr. Peterson, got a second by Mr. Trivett. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I just have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
We approved 1, 2, 3, 4 with rates, but I only see, no, you did 5. I only see 4. Which one am I missing?
On which one? I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of the rates of the flu
When you call,
vaccine.
no, you call in consideration for approval. Can you, I'm missing something, because I missed when you voted. I can do one-on-one. I'll do one-on-one.
Okay, probably
Did you separate those two or not?
which one is that?
Yeah, you did, no, okay.
So we did the
Cost of
BCC, we did CST,
Yeah.
the clinical
Yeah.
for Fayetteville State, the CPT for flu vaccines, and then I separated Rosetta
You
and
did, I
Vicilla.
want to
Yes,
make sure you
ma'am.
did.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yes, I want to make sure.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much.
Let's go to number 10B. Mr. Martin, you said you want to speak on that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Davis would like the board to consider scheduling a special meeting at 5:30 PM on Monday, November 19th, regarding a taxpayer appeal.
Got a motion by Mr. Peterson, a second by Mr. Privet. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Finance Department, Ms. Coleman.
Good evening to each of you. I'd like to review the dashboard for the end of August. Seems like a long time ago now. At the end of August, we had received 27.75% of the revenues in general fund and spent 13.69%. In solid waste, we collected 34.47 and spent 12.29. Mercy's telephone, we collected 10.47 and spent 11.38. And water, we were at 18.34% and spent 5.3. And just to remind you that some of these revenues and expenditures will roll back into last year. And when I give you a September update, it will have some new figures on it. So, anybody got any questions about the dashboard?
Thank you.
All right. My item B is consider waiving the provision in the county personnel policy to pay the employees, exempt and non-exempt employees, for their time worked during the storm. With the sheriff's department having to work, helping out with the DSNAP, and DSNAP is not reimbursable through FEMA, and DSS is almost nearly impossible for those employees to take time off. So I'm asking for.
Second.
I want to ask a question, you call the acronym, I'm trying to figure out what's the acronym, DSNAP, what's that?
Emergency food
Emergency
stamps.
food stamps.
So emergency food stamps,
Yes, sir. They started last Friday for DSS, and they'll go through this coming Saturday.
but they're exempt from getting paid.
No, they will get paid through their timesheet. They cannot get reimbursed through FEMA. This is just for the FEMA time that I'm asking for reimbursement.
So those got, all that cost that the county can be reimbursed, that's what it said.
Correct.
Got a motion by Mr.
I have
Peterson.
a question. Can you give me, you just said that, just those three, or those two?
Now, this is for all county employees that work during the storm. All, exempt and non-exempt.
Only if they are not being paid through FEMA, or doesn't matter?
Now, these are just the ones from FEMA that we can, that work through the storm itself.
All of them, okay?
That work the shelter, that work the
Yeah.
agencies, and work.
So the,
And they have to fill out the 14, and the time has to match on the activity log.
all right, thank you, I wasn't sure, okay, thank you.
We got a motion by Mr. Peterson, we got a second by Mr. Privet. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Again, Ms. Coleman, let me mention something. Ms. Coleman's husband, and I was in Bladensboro, and this man was hauling food to the transfer truck at midnight. We were getting food wherever we could get food, and I commend him and thank him for his service to the county. So,
Thank you.
emergency services, still on.
Good evening.
Emergency service.
All right, item A, there's been a lot of questions asked, if we were gonna waive permit fees, mainly related to electrical permits, through the building inspection office for storing vehicles. And what really brought this to light, for the first time, the power companies, are requiring a building inspector to inspect your property before they'll turn the power back on in a home that was damaged or flooded.
Motion to approve. Second.
All right, hold on one second. Mr. Martin and I talked about this today. You want to share it, or you want me to share it?
Well, I'll be glad to. I'm sure Mr. Kinlaw was about to speak to it, but just for full disclosure of information, the School of Government, Carol Malonzi in particular, has written information to counties and local governments explaining that the North Carolina Constitution prohibits local governments from exempting fees that are charged normally. And so, to certain classes or whatever. And so, I want the board to know that. I don't know if a nominal fee such as, $1, $2, $5 needs to be charged, but I just want you all
My
to.
recommendation would
to know
be
that.
to the board to make sure we don't get in trouble and have to fight this legally and then spend a bunch of money to represent ourselves, a reasonable dollar fee, if it's pleasing to the board.
I mean, that's all we charge to do inspection.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's normal
$1
fee.
instead of the normal 50.
For storm related.
Okay, I understand it, yeah.
Mr. Peterson amended his motion on that, and we got a motion by Mr. Peterson, we got a second by Mr. Good. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thanks for that.
Item B, every 5 years required by federal law, the county has to keep an active and updated hazard mitigation plan. Historically, it's always been Bladen County, and about 3 or 4 years ago now, we joined forces with Columbus County to do a joint plan. Because the state likes regional type things, and they like to put the bill for regional type things. The last time the county had to pay for it, I think we were in the neighborhood of 35,000 that we had to. So by joining Columbus a few years ago, we were able to get a grant to do that. Robinson County now wants to come on board and join us for a 3-county plan. And it is my understanding that this will ensure additional grant funding when our plan expires in 2019.
You want to considering making a motion to approve that?
I'll make that recommendation to the board that we allow it.
Let me elaborate on what he's talking about there too. And this really comes in line a lot with our industry. We're sitting there with Bladenboro right now, obviously knowing that they don't have the sewer system. But what a blessing it would be if Bladenboro, if we adopt this, can hook on to the Robertson County, and that eliminates the problem that we're facing trying to help the industry to go into the Bladenboro area due to they don't have facilities but for so many gallons per day. And, so I encourage you to consider it for several reasons, that being one main one.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Peters, got a second from Mr. Trivett. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. Move right on to 13A if that's okay. Chief Powell had something come up and asked me to speak on his behalf tonight. Went out for bids for to remount an ambulance that is in the current year budget. Basically, you may see this sheet, Atlantic Emergency was at 86,786. And Southeastern Special Vehicles was at 87,423, so $7,800 difference. The recommendation from us would be to go with Southeastern Special Vehicles due to there's 2 more additional years of warranty and 24,000 miles additional warranty for that $7,800.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion, question, okay.
Does this, reverse unit have that, stretcher? I was looking, I didn't see it. Yeah. I mean, I think that's something we need to include if we're gonna, from as we go forward, as we upfit our
Add it.
rescue bill. I
I think
think
Stephanie gave us the plan during the budget.
It says this unit will meet the cot restraint system standard by having striker performance load installed during the remount process.
well, excuse me, Cardell. I didn't see it on the sheet, the reason I was asking. The description of everything, where it had listed everything that was gonna come on ambulance.
Right, so,
I didn't see it, the reason I was
It's
asking.
very thin, another page.
So just double check, please.
I will, but it appears that the cot restraint system will be updated, but it will not have a brand new power stretcher.
Well, we need to get what we need. With power stretchers is what I'm trying to say, we need to get and add. When we do that, I think,
I know
from my standpoint.
Yeah,
what he's saying, if there's a little more money, then we know we're gonna need it, so let's go ahead and make sure we get it.
We'll go ahead and bring it back.
Didn't you say eventually the state gonna require it anyway on all those vehicles?
I think
They already,
Yeah.
they already
So I
required.
gotta go with it.
we got a motion by Mr. Cogdell, we got a second by Mr. Bullock. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
If you don't mind, Chairman, just 1 second, I'd
Yes,
like
sir.
to thank the commissioners that helped us through the storm, and the great team of folks that are behind me, that jumped into roles they'd never done before, and just knocked it out of the park. Along with a lot of other folks that are not in here, folks that were making the decisions, to taking out the trash, cooking the food, to pulling people off their rooftops, and, I'd like to recognize Aaron Robinson from Kelly Fire Department, who was in charge of the helm down there for quite a while, and they pulled off some great stuff down there, area back in, 115 people or so from Kelly, and, to all the fire departments, Flavor and Clark, and they did an awesome job doing quite a bit of rescues. I think our total was pushing 350 when we got done, so.
And Brandon Norris filled in for, didn't he fill in for the chief as?
He did,
So that was a new
Aaron
role.
and Brandon kind of took turns,
Okay.
taking care of things down there, so. Aaron, appreciate what you've done, appreciate you being here tonight on this other issue, so.
Was that Vermont crew very impressive down there?
Yes, sir.
I was impressed with them, I really was.
And one final thing with FEMA, every time we have a disaster, FEMA changes the way they do business. I'm learning along with the rest of them, but the disaster support services were the first folks on the street last week, and they were looking for areas to go door to door. So I circled Clark and Bladenburg and Kelly. Well, the water wasn't even down in Kelly yet, and they'd already started in Bladenburg and Clark door to door. To try to get as many people as possible before we open the doors, hopefully Thursday at the Ag Center with the Disaster Recovery Center, where anybody can come in and make application for FEMA assistance. So every day they send us a list of what FEMA folks are in the county working. We've had high water crews and shelter assistance crews and all kinds of folks here. So they're on the ground, they're here working. So any questions, please call. Thank you.
Thank you. General Services, Mr. Kip McCleary.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Changing up from the storm, trying to get back to some normal operations here. Our solid waste transport and disposal contracts expire at the end of this month. Forecasting that, we put these services out for bid. Mr. Martin and I met about it and discussed whether or not to try to renew current contracts or put it out for bid in hopes of lowering our cost or obtaining some new services in the contract would be more beneficial to the county. And in doing so, we did this in August, and then a rebid on the transport bids, again in September. And I think you have before you tonight this information. Transport bids came in from Custom Ecology and Hillco Transport, with Custom Ecology being at $12.50 a ton, Hillco Transport at $14.72 a ton. The fuel surcharges, I have given a breakdown chart to show you how those fuel surcharges apply, and that's on another page there. But it shows the comparison between the contracts. If you carried out the 3% CPI increase that is included in these contracts, and fuel surcharges projected up through the first dollar increase to $3.50 per gallon. And it still shows that CEI is the better deal for the county. I think in our next meeting, we will be bringing you a recommendation for contract to be awarded once our attorney has finished his review. And then the next page shows the solid waste disposal. It was previously called Waste Industries as Sampson County Disposal Inc. is the way they did it this time. Same company, same folks. But you can see where we actually lowered cost from our current expenditure to $28.79 a ton, which represents a total savings of about $50,000, $40,000 to the county over a 1 year period. That also will run out with a 3% CPI, a CPI based on annual consumer price index increases, but there is no fixed amount in that CPI. So they're offering to hold it at $28.79 a ton and just base CPI increases based on what the consumer price index is for each year. So with that information, we wanted to just share that with you tonight. This is where we are. We will hope to award contract by the end of this month so that we can proceed and continue our operations as we currently work. Yes, sir.
I got a letter from Leslie, we're talking about the 20-year contract.
Yes, sir.
I need you aware of that, and you probably.
Yes, sir, we're addressing that.
That's good.
Yes, sir.
I would like, Mr. Mark, if I can mention something and you clarify what I'm gonna say. And I think it's important for all of us to know, in my understanding from Mr. Mark, when we get these questions asked to us, and I know we're in a time of disaster right now. But our facility, what I understand out here at the landfill, that's just a holding area where it comes from A to customer, B to that building. And we collect the funds that C is requiring to haul it off and dispose of it.
Yes, sir. What we've got
That
there
we
is,
don't make any money, but going back to what he and I was talking about, there again, when we sit here and start talking about waiving, I understand from Mr. Martin, and he can correct me if I'm wrong or clarify, we don't really under the Constitution have that right.
That's what we understand, yes, sir.
So I think it's important that we take the time to explain that to people when they ask us, can you waive this? When we don't have the right and we can't.
right.
But then if FEMA will supply facilities or containers in this case, or the state pick it up, then that's a different story. But I think it's so easy to get us from being looked at hard that if I wanted that the graces of my heart, we can't do it.
Yeah.
But we're not making any money off of you on your trash to begin with.
Yes, sir. We're a consolidation facility, is really what we are. Everything in the county comes into that one location, it's bulk loaded on the trucks and then transported out. And this is the services we're bidding out or have bid out at this point, is the transport and the disposal. We still run operations like we currently do. We load it ourselves. We have scale house that we operate ourselves. We will still have solid waste staff collecting from each convenience center. Each convenience center will still run just like it is per this plan that we have before you tonight.
But can I ask a question? When you get your property tax, when you have landfill fees on it, isn't that what we use to handle that expenditure when you get with that stuff? Isn't that
Yes, sir, it is for
that-
it is for residential. There's also a commercial charge at the gate of $45 per ton.
To bring residential for commercial stuff.
Yes, sir.
But
That's
the
correct.
people, when they pay their taxes on their property, and it says, that's for the land fee, tipping fee when they bring it in, or they have to pay addition if they bring something else.
That's for the cost of the trash that's brought in on the county. If they, for instance, live in the rural parts of the unincorporated areas of the county, and they use one of the collection centers, then as that trash is brought to the site, it's already paid for through the disposal fee that you mentioned, the landfill fee. And the same thing for the customers in town, they pay the disposal fee on their property taxes, they don't pay the collection fee. So the town of Wolftown brings their trash in, White Lake, Bladenboro, et cetera, and it's already covered when those trucks come across for residential, but commercial, there is a charge.
So we need to adjust fees, we have to adjust tax, land fee, tip fee that's on tax.
That's the largest generator of revenue, so that would be, yes, sir.
That's where we would adjust that.
But at the same time, for commercial, we don't want to be in a deficit situation where our rate's lower than what we're actually paying to dispose of the trash.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out where that cost is curtailed at, where it comes
Yes,
from,
sir.
that's where it comes from.
And in addition to what he's saying there, when you're talking about construction demolition materials, these aren't materials that would be calculated in our normal solid waste stream. These are in addition to what we're currently paying to dispose of. So that's also why there's a fee assessed to construction demolition materials.
So like that place you have now where debris is going to, out in my audit, where you're taking it back out there, you got a place for land for debris?
That is for vegetative debris only. And what we're doing there is we're assuming the risk of opening a disaster debris site, which is a state permitted facility that we already have approved. We're operating that to receive all the vegetative debris, meaning trees, limbs, leaves, and things that would naturally grow, with the hopes of being able to get reimbursed from FEMA for our total cost of that operation. And that's just to reduce volumes.
Is that coming across the scale and then going out?
We're weighing it for documentation.
And
There
then-
is no
then
charge
we
for,
gonna- And so we planning on seeing if we can bill FEMA for that cost.
yes, sir. We
Okay.
did last time, and we're successful at it, and we hope to do it again this time.
Okay, that's all.
That's why it was important to separate that house stuff from those
Absolutely.
trees in there.
And the state will also be bringing us the stuff that they receive off the roadsides, which is vegetative debris, and it'll also go to that site. We actually started burning out there last Friday. We have a air quality permit issued to us from the state to reduce that volume and pit burn that debris. So we're reducing the volume by pit burning.
Okay, the reason I was asking the question, I seen that site set up and I didn't know what was going across the scale.
Yes, sir. It's all going across scales for documentation.
So anything the site's not taking, and it's in, volume, you have to pay extra for it, get it.
That's correct, sir.
disposed of.
Yes, sir.
One other question.
Yes.
The people at these, outlying areas, who do they work for, those employees?
They work for a company that we contract with called Greenway. Greenway Protective Services provides the staff on those sites for us, which keeps us from having to hire those staff directly ourselves.
Mr. Martin?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to share, Mr. Peterson brought up a good point, that the attorney did reference in a letter a concern about the time frame of the contract. I had a conversation with him about that this afternoon, and he's fine with it. There was a provision that it could be extended for a time beyond the 10. We wouldn't want to do that anyway, so, but he's fine with the 10 years. This, just to let you all know, this is the third 10-year term. So beginning 20 years ago, the county started with a 10-year term. Landfills, as you know, there are only limited numbers of landfills in the state, and they like to be able to know their projections for tonnage coming for the future years, so.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk. Advisory board appointments.
Motion to table, keep letting you.
Second. Got a motion by Mr. Peterson.
I have a question.
Table. We got a second by Mr. Dallas. We got a question by
Question, yeah.
Mr. Munn.
You saying 5 people, but I didn't see the one from East Lane on the last list. Have you not added his name? Was he considered one of the new? I sent you an email. So that's why he'll be coming, okay, so he's adding this one, okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Voluntary Agriculture Districts Committee 2.
Motion to reappoint.
Got a motion by Mr. Peterson to reappoint. You got a second by Mr. Dallas. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Watershed Review Board.
I would not report, I think, one of them should have sent, mine should have sent his letter of resignation, and the other one is sick, so I need to wait. Can we table
Table
it?
it.
Please, table.
We got a motion by Dr. Mongolan to table it. We got a second by Mr. Peterson. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Advisory board appointment for consideration during October 15, 2018 meeting. Child, facility protection team, excuse me, y'all, I left that at the door. East Arcadia Fire Service District Committee 2, EMS Advisory Council 15, White Lake Planning and Zoning, DTJ 1. So keep those in mind for the, next meeting on the 15th. Yes, sir.
Mr. Martin,
Yes, sir.
if I was talking with Mr. Greg Garvin about my appointee being on here, and I haven't been able to reach him, and he hasn't been to a meeting, and I want to see if I can have him, or what do I need to do to have him added on for my appointment?
For the planning board,
For the planning board.
we can place that on the next agenda if that's,
Yeah,
add that to.
just go ahead, because I can't reach the individual, and
Okay.
I need to put somebody else on.
I'm sure Mr. Elkins would appreciate that.
So if you do that from there.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I address the items, if I may just take 1 second to echo the positive sentiments that have been stated already so eloquently by the chairman and Mr. Kinlaw. I do want to thank Mr. Kinlaw for his leadership during this Hurricane Florence event. It really was, it was very impressive, and he has worked hard, and so certainly kudos to him. I also want to thank the commissioners for the support you all shown during this time. I've never seen so much cooperation from such a a wide, diverse group of individuals locally and from all across the country, as you all know. And also, I want to say there definitely was, without a doubt, there was one common purpose, and that was the safety of the citizens of Blaine County. And so I don't think there was any question about that. I do want to let you all know we intend to send thank you notes to those that we know of who have provided assistance. If any of you can think of individuals or groups that you want to be sure we don't miss, please let us know, and we definitely want to do that. So thank you all. I'll review the calendar briefly, let you know that this Wednesday and Thursday, the Agama Days will be held at the Blaine County Park. I think from the forecast, it's gonna be good weather, so hopefully.
They have been canceled.
They have?
Greg.
Okay, I hadn't heard that. Thank you for,
They're gonna do it in the school system.
okay, all right, well, thank you, I didn't realize that. On Wednesday the 3rd at 5:30, the Diabetes Forum continues at Baldwin Branch Church. On Friday from 1 until 8, the Cycle North Carolina event will visit Bladen County and Elizabethtown. That's being sponsored by the Chamber, or hosted by the Chamber, those folks, as they come in, so we want to give them a warm welcome. On Monday, the 8th, at 5:30 p.m., the Health and Human Services Advisory Board meets. On Tuesday, the 9th, at 12 noon, the Elizabethtown White Lake Area Chamber meeting will be held at the Farmers Market here in Elizabethtown. Also at 2 that afternoon, the opioid working group will meet at the Health Department. It is, I believe, where that location will be. On Thursday, the 11th, from 10 until 2, the Harvest Festival will be held at the Blaine County Senior Center. Also that evening at 6 p.m., the Seafood and Sunset fundraiser will be held for the BCC Foundation, and that will be. Yes, sir.
That's been moved.
It has? Okay, I didn't realize that either.
Yeah.
You know, I saw something, I got something that was from the foundation today, and I haven't,
Yeah, I
haven't
think
seen it.
it's 25th.
25th?
I think it's 25th.
Okay. Thank you.
I think, that's what I'm saying.
Thank you very much. That evening at 7, the Blaine County Fire Association meeting will be held at the Fire Department in Dublin. There is a special meeting on the 15th at 5 p.m. at the Pell Melvin Building, and that's for the Cooperative Extension Report to the People. The board meets that evening at 6:30. On Thursday, the 25th, there's supposed to be an MCAD meeting as well that evening, so that's gonna be a double booking there. And on Friday and Saturday, the 26th and 27th, the Bladenboro Beast Fest will be held in downtown Bladenboro.
Is that McKay meeting still on?
MC, as part of, I don't know that we've heard, have you heard, we haven't heard otherwise, I don't know.
What's that, Greg?
It maybe it has been,
I thought it was canceled, but I'm not sure.
you know, I think, I will double check, I think you may be right.
It's been canceled.
Okay, all right, good, thank you. Moving over to November, the board, well, there's a prayer service at 8 a.m. on the 5th. There's a board meeting that evening at 6:30. On Wednesday.
Let's discuss that just a minute.
Okay.
On the 5th, I know it's been practiced at some time, I recall being on the Board of Elections, that if you had a commissioners meeting the night before an election, that you elected maybe to change it. So if that's the consensus now, we probably need to discuss it now, or it's pleasure of the board. But that's what I understand is
And the
happening.
meeting date, it doesn't matter, man. Usually we meet, usually scheduled the Monday following, that's what it's always been customary, we move it to the next Monday.
We can make that same, I don't have a problem meeting.
The following Monday will be, Veterans Day.
That's what I was gonna say, that's the one complication with that. We're
And
changing.
that's the consensus then, from what I'm hearing, is leave it like it is.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I
Thanks
just didn't mean to interrupt.
Yes, sir. Thank you. On Thursday, the 8th, the Fire Association will meet at the East Arcadia Fire Department. Offices are closed on the 12th in observance of Veterans Day holiday. And I'm not sure about the HHS advisory, I guess that probably may be changed. On the Tuesday, the 13th, the chamber meeting will be held at the Farmers Market. Also, the opioid meeting will be held at the Health Department. On Saturday, the 17th, the second annual Pork and Beets Festival will be held at the Cape Fear Farmers Market here in Elizabethtown, and the board is scheduled to meet on the 19th at 6:30.
What day was closed, will the office be closed in November for Thanksgiving?
Monday, for Thanksgiving, that's a good
Thursday
point.
and Friday.
Yes, ma'am. Thursday and Friday.
Friday.
Thanks. addressed item D. Moving over to item C. I want to thank the Robinsons for being here. As you all know, there was discussion and concern related to the Kelly Dike during the Hurricane Florence event. Water did breach the dike in a number of locations and went around it. We have researched the statute and shared that information with you in your agenda packet. It was established the legislation was approved in 1961. There was an election held by the folks in that area. They approved to levy an additional tax on themselves up to 10 cents. That tax was collected for a period of time. We don't know when that was discontinued, but it was 20+ years ago. And right now, there's just over $35,000 in that account, according to the chairman. Mr. Robinson, Aaron is on that board. Charles Russ is the chairman, and he's the one who shared that information with me last week. But their plan at this point is to use that money for emergency repairs and then come back to the board in the early part of 2019 to ask the commissioners to reenact or reinstitute that tax to begin generating additional revenue for ongoing maintenance of the.
Is that tax, just tax to the people in that area? Or?
Yes, sir, and the boundaries are very clearly defined in the legislation, who that would impact.
Who's gonna come back and work on the Corps of Engineers?
Well, that was the second part for tonight. We would like to request that the Corps come in and perform an assessment. They've indicated, well, let me say this. The Kelly Dike and Drainage District is actually a political subdivision of the state. So just like the county's a political subdivision of the state. So it definitely has ownership authority and that type thing. And basically the requirements for that committee are laid out in the legislation as well, as far as the activities they're supposed to perform for the maintenance of it. But we would like to ask the Corps to come in and do an assessment to determine at least what would need to take place in order to get it into a good standing in terms of the integrity of the dike and that type of thing.
I think Ms. Peterson had a question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad this came up, because I was down there yesterday talking to a gentleman, and he was saying that some of the people that own land around it, I hope I got the right dike, is there just one?
Yes, sir. It's the longest one in North Carolina.
That they actually, the landowners actually punched holes in it and things like that, and at one time, Mr. Henry, I believe it was,
Yes, sir.
they used to inspect it. And then for some reason, he quit and some other gentleman started. And I don't know if he quit, the guy said he didn't know if he quit because we weren't getting paid or what, but I was thinking that the government was paying them to inspect this thing annually. And I was gonna bring this up and talk about this tonight. After I made a trip down yesterday and talked, just to see what's going on and stuff.
What I understand was Mr. Henry was paid to maintain it, isn't that correct?
At least inspect it, yes.
Yeah.
And he didn't uphold it. He inspected it, but he wasn't making sure that it was being maintained.
And then did he pass it off to somebody else?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, that's what I was told, so I
Well, I
don't
mean,
know.
it could have been,
Cause he said Mr. Henry got so old, he couldn't do it, or couldn't manage it, or whatever, is what he was saying.
yes, sir.
And that this other guy was doing it, didn't know if he quit because he wasn't getting paid or what. But it's something, it's gotta be inspected, we can't let property owners destroy that, because this guy said that's the reason Kelly complains about it, because these property owners kinda punched holes in it and kinda destroyed it.
There's trees on it that are, I don't know, 30 years old probably already. And the last conversation with the Corps was, the only way they'd help us with it is we would take all the trees off and the stumps and fix it. But we don't have the funds to do that.
Well, is there the guy that owns most of that land, a logger?
Corbett Timber Company owns a good portion of it, and there is some places
That he's logged and he's,
tore holes in it to
Right.
pull wood through.
right, that's what I was told.
Yes, sir.
That was the question I've been asked by the Corps of Engineers, if you gonna put the land there and man on his private property, that's what I'm saying, that's really asking who's gonna do it, because the Corps of Engineers come there, they'll take it to delegate that land like it did in Lumberton, where they'll build a dike and design, they maintain the one in Robertson County. maintain this one and design this one and put it back up. When you put the 100-year floodplain on.
That'd be great if that, we definitely want to engage them in conversation and see what can be worked
That
out.
build that thing, because see what I'm saying, you have to put the 100-year floodplain, you guarantee the water's not gonna come out the thing. That's what it's supposed to be, so you have to have all that put in place before you go out and just put up a dike.
Hey, when they come, I'll be part of that conversation before we in there, because I've got an idea in Bladenboro.
Okay.
You put a core in there,
But, Mr. Chair, but also I had concerns that some of the citizens felt that because it's on, property, personal property, they use that as areas that they do their bikes and other things. People have recreational facilities
Or wheels,
back there.
no.
Yeah, and so what happens, that also, really degrades the ability to,
Going back to that landowner, does somebody know if he owned quite a bit of that property? But obviously, he had to give some kind of legal rights for that dike to be built and give up some of his privileges of his property. So what allows him now to go back and destruct what evidently he agreed to allow to happen? Why does he feel like he can do that now? Because I heard what Mr. Peterson said. I've heard that people logging, they cut through and they don't go back and fix.
I think it's his dad, it's another generation. And his dad established this, and he didn't, once he did that, what I was told, he thought the dam or dike had already been condemned, so what the heck?
I would recommend the council, if they would, if it's the pleasure of the board, to see if there's any documentation, Mr. Johnson, on what you can and cannot do if he surrendered a certain amount of that property for the dike to be done. What's his entitlement as far as him being able to construct and not maintain?
Yeah, I know my father was talking to me about this years and years ago, but he's familiar with the creation of that. Nelson Squires was down in that area and everything, worked on it with the county a long time ago too.
There could be something that when you think,
I do.
yeah, that way we can find out.
Did the Corps of Engineers put that in this?
Correct, that's the Corps of Engineers, that's who come inspected it, warrant. So I'm sure we can get some help from the board.
And I think they condemned it in 2010. And the reason for condemning it was because it had the trees and it hadn't been maintained.
And probably those openings.
Yes, sir.
so that's why the engineers don't mess with it now.
But it probably felt like there's some liability on their part and they can't control it.
Yes, sir.
Makes sense.
It does.
I'll look
But
into it
if
for
you
you.
check that,
I
I
sure
think
will.
that will get us
It's gotta
started.
be fixed by it.
Get the process
Yes,
done,
sir.
sure.
And the only thing we don't know if we can fix it back, just fix it with the 35,000 that we have. I mean, we can't even pass it
15 miles.
with that amount of money.
Well,
And it's gonna
we'll work
probably
through
be
that
good anyway.
when we get there.
Good job, guys, by the way.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Moving to item D.
Rick, when you,
Yes, sir.
one more thing, please, Mr. Rick.
Yes, sir.
Can you get us all this information about this dike and if there's any documentation or whatever, so
I will.
we can speak?
The statute that created it is
So,
in there, but I'll get
when
it.
y'all come ask, when you come ask us to levy that tax, are you gonna have a petition or what are your plans around that? So that, I mean, to make sure the community agree. I mean, have you thought about that? I mean, just something to think about.
We need recommendations. You know, it's, when you start talking about taxing
Oh, I-
people, it's a touchy subject. And that's why we wanted to come and, Mr. Martin was gracious to present it for us and we appreciate that.
Well, what we have to look at as commissioners, we value the property and the people's property, because we need the values on their property to stay up.
Yes, sir.
So we're very interested in hopefully helping, because it's to our advantage county-wide to keep that property value up, so our revenue keeps coming in. And not only that, our citizens to lose their valuation of their property. So I think that's what Mr. Peterson is good at saying, is we're very interested, because we don't need valuations to go down.
If I may, so do we need a committee to sort of steer this up? I mean, or me to
To
just
work
think
with their
about it.
committee?
Yeah, I'll work and do it.
Yes, sir, we'd appreciate that.
So I volunteered to be on it, cause I got work to go too.
I was talking to one guy with soil and water, I think, and they were saying that they was presently too working on something with that. And they working on that right now, trying to figure out what to do that night down there.
Well, we contacted, I know we contacted them last week, but Richard Smith, who works at the Farm Service Agency, has also been,
Yeah, those
he's
guys,
been
they were
active
working
in
on
that.
something about that.
Well, that's what I'm saying, need a committee so everybody ain't going in different directions.
I'd like if both be
Yes,
on
ma'am.
that committee as well.
Okay, Mr. Moore.
okay, thank you. Moving to item D, we became aware of communication concerns in the Tar Heel and White Oak area during the storm, and the sheriff has provided a memo just kind of updating us with regard to that. And part of that issue is gonna be resolved with the implementation of the Bladen County Emergency Services response. It's basically the Bladen County alternate telecommunication system, which, you know, there's funding included in this year's budget for that. But ultimately, a new Viper tower would be the ideal remedy for that situation. And so, we don't know that that's gonna happen, but it may be in the county's interest to send a letter to the Highway Patrol requesting that. And so if it's agreeable with the board, we'll certainly plan to do that.
I've got one question, I'm all for that, don't get me wrong. But why is it just services? I mean, we've had that for how many years?
It's not just services, sir.
It's the first time we've heard it.
Yeah.
It's been an issue for a while.
Well, I mean, and okay,
It's been the budget for the last 2 years.
I'll respond like this, if we have an issue like that, we need to know about it before situations like we had a couple weeks ago happen.
Yes, sir. It's been in the budget for the last 2 years.
Is that-
I never have heard that.
Okay.
Can I add something, is that a part of those antennas you talking about moving? And that will be a part of that Viper, the assist the Viper, the spiral and that?
The stuff that or the information I presented, about during the budget process that y'all approved through Bradley's funding, that's gonna be part of the Band-Aid. But the ultimate fix would be an actual Viper site up there. So we've got a fix, it'll about to be in place, but it's gonna take a little, the ultimate fix would be a full Viper site. And that's why we're asking the board to consider doing that letter to the Highway Patrol.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Okay, thank you. Moving to item E. The last meeting, we were asked about the proposed Parks and Recreation Matching Incentive Grant Program. A copy of that draft is included in your information again, and just wanted to bring it back to the board. One thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just echo Mr. Pate's sentiment. The focus, the long-term focus, and for those of the commissioners who were here when the last master plan was done, has been very much focused on the community park, like Grant mentioned, on Highway 701, and that's where the resources have been focused. As you know, since that last master plan was completed, the county did apply for part of funds, and substantial upgrades were made to the park, and it's big improvements, and so that's a positive thing. However, through programs such as this and those mentioned in that proposed plan that you all considered tonight, that would be a change in the scope of the county's service area in terms of parks programs. And so it's not that maybe there hasn't been a willingness to do that if that was the direction of the board, but in the past, the direction has been focused centrally toward that Highway 701 site. So I just want to share that with you all just for historic knowledge or whatever. So that would be a change in direction. But again, I don't know if the board wants to appoint a committee or how you want to consider moving forward, but again, this is a draft. I know you've looked at it in the past, but we're basically at the board's pleasure as far as how to move forward.
On the incentive grant?
The matching grant program, yes,
So
sir.
I'll make a motion that we appoint a committee consisting of the board members and the necessary people that we need to formulate that. So there's a motion, so we're going to put on it.
We've got a motion by Mr. Cogdell. We got a second by Dr. Mungoins. Any further
I've got a
discussion?
question.
Mr. Peters?
So, what about the 16-page procedure? I mean, is that gonna be part of that group's directive? I mean,
Yeah.
you don't, Lisbon Town's not even included in this proposal.
But I thought the way that we was growing up, everybody would be considered, but.
Now, it's a 6 mile radius from the county park.
That's what I'm saying, I thought it would be.
Well, this time's more than 6 miles. They're within the 6 miles.
Well, you know, that's what I'm saying, if you were part of community, Charles.
Well, that's what I asked, was the 16-page procedure gonna be part of that committee's?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll make a discussion as to which project comes first, and how you gonna follow that procedure that the committee have there.
No, I don't think the committee needs to make decisions on which project comes first.
Well, we send it as back to the full committee.
You still,
Yeah.
we can send a recommendation,
Yeah.
instead of sending a consensus, just a recommendation as to what goes where and which one get approved. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I've been since day one, I'm totally against it.
You see how it works, you already appropriated money, you see how it gonna work.
Money's appropriated, the money's in the budget, it's not appropriated for anything.
But that's what we put it there so that we.
It's not
But that's what I'm
appropriated
saying,
for.
when the committee put it there, so if we come back with a recommendation, I was understanding that the money was available for those type of recommendations to come back before the board, and would have to be approved by the board.
That's right. It's in the
As whether or not that
contingency.
funds would be allocated.
You elaborate on that, Ms. Martin?
Yes, sir, there's money in the contingency line item, but it hasn't been appropriated for any specific purpose.
Use the wrong word, but I know we put it there so it could be allocated if needed. For that purpose.
Again, we got a motion by Mr. Cogdill, we got a second by Dr. Mungor. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Moving to item F. The board is requested to consider scheduling a special meeting regarding dementia initiative, or it's for initiative, dementia-friendly initiative training. We were concerned that the board may not meet at the first meeting on the first Monday in November, so we recommended the first meeting in December because other dates were booked up. But if the board, since the board plans to meet on the first Monday in November, I would recommend that date be, well, you may be